In his novel, The Diary of a Country Priest, French Catholic writer Georges Bernanot writes, quote, "Faith is not a thing which one loses. We merely cease to shape our lives by it." Close quote. Why have so many college students ceased to shape their lives by their faith? And what can we do about it? Hillsdale College opinions editor for the Collegian and Evangelization Culture Online's college beat writer Caroline Kurt on evangelizing the college student in an age of uncertainty now. My name is Todd Warner, and this is the Evangelization Culture Podcast from Word on Fire. Caroline Kurt is a senior majoring in English at Hillsdale College. She's the opinions editor for Hillsdale's celebrated newspaper, the Collegian. Caroline is also a backbone freelance writer for Evangelization and Culture Online's The College Beat, a column crafting the Catholic sensibility on timeless topics and current events written by college students, for college students, and lifelong learners. Caroline Kurt, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a huge blessing.
Segment 1, Growing Up Catholic. In a homily offered in Perth, Australia, St. John Paul II insisted, quote, "As the family goes, so goes the nation, and so goes the whole world in which we live," close quote. G.K. Chesterton asserted that, quote, "The disintegration of rational society started in the drift from the hearth and the family. The solution must be a drift back," close quote. And St. Teresa of Calcutta, in her 1979 Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, said, quote, "Love begins at home, and it is not how much we do, but how much we love and how much we put that into action," close quote. Caroline, let's begin with beginnings. So tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up, and who are you surrounded by?
Yeah, so I grew up in the northern Chicago suburbs. I've lived in the same house my whole life. It's been a real blessing. It's
Mm.
very special to me. And Chicago is wonderful. We have just, you know, we have such a close knit, very strong, very devout Catholic community there. And I have many friends now that aren't, haven't had the same kind of blessing. So uh, that's been huge. But growing up, I am the oldest of five. Well, okay, to nuance that a little bit. I'm the oldest of four. I have three younger brothers, and then I have an older sister actually who lived for 3 days outside the womb. She had anencephaly, which is kind of a defect that affects the brain. Uh, so she was born just a year before me, almost
Mm.
exactly, and had 3 days on this earth and then went to heaven.
Mm.
Um, and so growing up, my parents are both really wonderful, practicing Catholics. They made a point not only of, taking us to Sunday Mass and sitting us in, one of the front rows so we could see what was going on
Mm.
and, doing family prayers every night with us, praying for 4 meals, but also teaching us so much about the faith and, sacrificing a lot to make sure we were going to schools where we have really good, intellectual and moral and formation of the heart as well.
Mm.
So I credit them with just like so, so much. And like, yeah, I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't had parents that just put like everything out there to, give us the like one greatest gift of the faith.
So, Caroline, everybody who knows the families where there's you as the oldest daughter and then three boys wants to know, did you corral the three boys? Did they torment you, or was it a mix somewhere in between?
It was somewhere in between. I think I had to accept pretty early on that they were not interested in tea parties. We did. That was just off the table for like communal family games. I could make my mom have tea parties with me, but anyone else was just a hard no. But we had like backyard wilderness adventures. We built with like blocks and trains and Matchbox cars and
Sure.
Legos and like all of that. It was so much fun. We're all very close in age. I wasn't even 5 when my youngest brother was born. He is just 16 now. So I think that both led to a lot of fighting
Yeah. Yeah.
when we were growing up. Just all the competition, the boys especially, were just competing all the time. Everything was a competition. It drove my mother mad, but she also enjoyed it. Uh, and yeah, a lot of competition. But then, now we have very, very close relationships. So, man, could you remind me of your question?
No, I was just asking, was it a balance of you corralling them, or if they were tormenting you, and you've
Yeah,
kind of said it was
yeah.
somewhere in between.
I was bossy, so I tried a lot to corral them, and I was sometimes successful. For a while, I could kind of win just because I was bigger and a little smarter.
Yeah.
But my reign of terror kind of came to an end when they were like taller than me, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Well, let's.
Yeah.
You alluded to, and we're going to talk in a minute about your schooling, but let's talk about the formative notion of the Catholic faith with your parents. It sounds like this is the air you were breathing from as far back as you remember. What did it mean to you to have a family that put prayer at the center of kind of family time together, the mass that you weren't missing, the lessons they were teaching? What did what did a Catholic upbringing mean to you, in terms of facing trials, in terms of growing as an individual, in terms of deepening your outlook on the world?
Wow.
We're
Man, hard
going to
to.
start with the really easy questions, Caroline.
Yeah, no, hard to put that succinctly, but I'll try. Um, yeah, I think my parents just instilled in us both through the way we were like living and then also kind of talking this out to us, like that the faith is just the bedrock of all of our lives.
Mm,
And, we'll get into this in the interview, but like uh, I have had like some pretty difficult things happen to me
mhm.
in the last few years. And yeah, I was just talking about this the other day with a friend actually that like, wow, I don't know what like people do who don't have faith,
Yeah.
because um, just never for a second, by the grace of God, just never for a second, like, did I doubt that God was like there and like near to us actually and
Mm,
cared, which is, a great, gift from him. But yeah, that came just from growing up that way.
yeah.
It wasn't so much a kind of conscious intellectual decision as much as like this is just the way my intellect, yes, but my like heart had been like formed since
Mm.
before I could remember.
And let's emerging out of that kind of being bathed in the love of Christ, from the love of your parents, from the practice of prayer, from the attending of masses, and so on. You also attended an all-girls Catholic school called Willows Academy. Um, how did that add to the formation of your faith?
Totally. Oh my gosh. Shout out Willows. They're amazing. They are a grade 6 through 12 school. So some girls like only go for middle school or high school, but I
Mm,
was there for all 7 years. It was a blast. I mean, first of all, like as a girl coming from a household of all brothers, like it was so fun to just experience that sisterhood every single day. Like,
yeah.
braiding each other's hair in the hallways and just all the, you know, girlish stuff that we were doing. It was a blast. But I think one of the really special things about Willows that maybe sets it apart from a lot of Catholic schools, unfortunately, is that we had the Blessed Sacrament with us in a chapel
Mm,
just down the hall, like 24/7. And so, we had really wonderful chaplain who was like always available for confessions, which coming to college where I have to like make a lot more of an effort to get that sacrament, like, wow, what a gift.
yeah.
um, but yeah, our Lord was always there. And like, you'd walk past the chapel in passing, like, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, just
Mm,
walking around school. And um, you could, always stop in kind of anytime you really wanted to. So, and that, obviously was the beating heart of our religious formation. We had daily mass that was optional, but I grew to, try to, really appreciate it and try to attend almost every day. And again, without having the Blessed Sacrament there, like, really gave like meaning and color to everything we
Hmm.
were learning about, especially in, theology classes, philosophy classes, but really touched everything. And I think that's where I learned to love our Lord and the Eucharist so much.
It's fantastic. Caroline, from the time you were in fifth grade, though, we know that your mother battled illness, and
Hmm.
I know she was ultimately diagnosed with colon cancer. With respect to your mom's health, what did life look like in those late years of elementary school, kind of to the eve of going off to college?
Yeah, my parents made a really heroic effort to just make sure life was normal for us.
Mm,
And even though especially as someone who's like kind of melancholic,
mm,
um, really felt the effects of the illness and kind of uncertainty deeply, um, I have to give it to them. Like they were really successful in making sure that we could just like live normal lives,
yeah,
and they wouldn't necessarily share every kind of medical up and down with us, because they knew, like I especially would have just been like consumed by like fear and worry that like might not have been appropriate to like what I could handle at the time.
yeah.
Um, and that was especially true when I was in, fifth, sixth grade, middle school, even early high school. So, you know, yeah, I was very much always conscious that, my mom's health was precarious, and that she suffered a lot. And I think that gave me, you know, yeah, both kind of fostered like a sense of like, wow, kind of the real things in this life are really real.
Mm,
Like things really matter. And also like, I don't know, our family has always like dealt with these things with a lot of humor too.
hmm.
And so kind of both that solemnity and then also the humor. But in terms of just the day-to-day life, like again, pretty normal.
Yeah.
I, played sports and had a lot of friends and like did lots of crafty things and reading, and I was a kid.
Did you have a sense that was there, this is really obviously very trying thing, something that's very trying for a young kid to have to kind of go through. Was there a sense that there was this suffering that was always in the background? There was a din that you kind of that accompanied you for these many years during those formative years of schooling, or would you say, yeah, yeah, it was there, but at the same time, you, like you said, your parents were very conscientious about, yes, informing you, but also identifying how much did they want to tell you so you could live a normal life, and secondly, you just kind of immerse yourself in a normal life. I guess my question is, what was it like to have a little din of suffering and walking in spite of that suffering through the life of a normal child?
Yeah, man. I Yeah, you're right. Like that's a good way to phrase it. The din was always there.
Hmm.
I think, and that's something I brought to prayer just many times, I think. And like through my mom's example, again, even though she was like the last person ever to like kind of bring up her own suffering,
Mm,
but living with her, it just eventually comes up sometimes.
right.
But uh, learned from her really how to like carry a cross well and with a lot of love, and to accept it as like a good gift from God, which is a lot. So I think, I don't know, a lot of it was just like learning after her example to like, okay, well, if she can carry, this cross that is like the heaviest for her, as, still a young mom, a mom of young kids, if she can do this with a lot of grace and like confidence in God's will ultimately, like I can too. I think some of that is like I had to that together in the later years and even after she's passed, but there is that sense even as a kid, like we can suffer well, and kind of have an ultimate peace reign over the family,
Mm.
even when a lot of things are very precarious, uncertain, chaotic.
Your mom passed away just before you went off to college at Hillsdale, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
In the inaugural essay for Evangelization Culture Online's The College Beat, titled "To Whom Shall We Go? Tragedy, Renewal, and the Faith of a College Student," you wrote, quote, "College life was everything I hoped it would be. I had fantastic classes, a community of supportive friends, and a devoted boyfriend, yet nothing and no one could fill the hole in my heart the way the faith did. The church gave me a home when my mother's absence made my earthly home feel empty. It offered eternity when I grasped just how finite this life is. Most of all, it gave my suffering meaning. The heavier my present life felt, the more easily I could recognize a greater reality at work. Through this cross, Catholicism grew exponentially more real to me," close quote. So, Caroline, how did the acute absence of your mom, the suffering that seemed unending, how did it draw you closer to God and not further away from God?
I think just seeing her like die a really holy death
Mm,
is something that like you just can't, like if you've experienced this, like you just can't like put it into words totally, and that's good. It should actually properly escape words. But there's this just very visceral experience of like God is real and like all of this is real, and like God like is closer to us than like ever before. I feel like just because of uh the again like that the serenity and like love with which she died.
mm,
And so I think I was able to carry that to college, that sense of like, my mom's like death is kind of ever present to me. I actually a friend of mine just lost a parent as well, and we were having a conversation about this a couple days ago. Just like, wow, like you're here, you're back at Hillsdale, but um, in some sense, like you're not really here. Like
yeah.
you're with this parent. Um, but as much as her death and um all of that suffering was like present to me, like so too was like God's um grace and just his kind of quiet presence. I think I alluded to this in the article. I think that like there was just a lot of prayer that year especially, but also in the years prior and after, that just was inconclusive or kind of not emotionally satisfying,
Mm.
but like always it was the case that like, yeah, our Lord was there and that was enough.
Caroline, and this is a very, I hope you don't mind me asking this, but it's a blunt question
No.
because I know there's a lot of other people who've gone through tragedies of their own. And they arrive at, sometimes they arrive at a place of distrust in God. The questions of why, this the kind of almost the Job like righteous indignation that comes with saying, why did this have to happen? Um, was there ever a part of you in the process of this that became angry or frustrated or obviously vexed by why this would happen, or was there more of a solace in the midst of misery, in the midst of tragedy, but a solace in the kind of never-ending, overwhelming grace of God that can kind of keep you afloat in the midst of all this?
I think again, yeah, just through God's grace, and maybe also because I'm like fairly melancholic
Yeah.
in temperament. Uh, it was the latter, like weirdly enough, and um, I think sometimes actually more than my like being tempted to kind of lash out at God or be angry or whatever. Like my temptation that I was very conscious of was more that uh like I would kind of turn inward to like self-pity. And again, yeah, like through God's grace, I was like very conscious of like, okay, that would be really bad actually. I talk about this kind of at length in the article you've referenced
Hmm.
for the College Beat. Um, but yeah, just temperamentally, whatever, I was conscious of like that's more my temptation, and that's something I had to really, really battle against time and time again. And the example my like family set for me really helped me to kind of recognize that and then confront it. It was like, no, this will kind of warp my world if I give in to this.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
So, what would you say to others about finding God amid inexplicable and exhausting grief? What kind of counsel could you provide to somebody who's listening that says, I'm at a loss. I don't know where I am. I'm literally vertiginous here." What could you say to them?
I think first of all, like I'm so sorry. There's no words. I think sometimes when you're inexperienced at like confronting grief, like or like comforting another person who's really going through it, like you assume that like somehow I must be able to find this like the right words,
Mhm.
and there just aren't always um, them, and that's okay. But more concretely, I would say just like run to the cross, like the only person who is capable of like holding all your pain, and in time like making it meaningful, is our Lord. And there's a reason why we as Catholics have that beautiful tradition of hanging crucifixes everywhere. It's not just kind of blank crosses. It's a crucifix with a bleeding, dying, suffering man on it. And that's our God, and that's weird. um, but yeah, run to the cross. And I think what really saved me and many, many others, my mom as well, I know, was that like my suffering always seemed to have meaning.
Mhm.
Or I was always able to kind of get to the place where like it was, I was reminded like, no, my suffering has meaning. And sometimes the phrase like quote unquote like offer it up can be like used in a way that sort of like comes across as like dismissive or just
Mm.
like kind of a throwaway answer. But uh, really, when it's used well, it's not at all.
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah,
Segment two: The College Writer. Flannery O'Connor once wryly admitted, quote, "Writing a novel is a terrible experience during which the hair often falls out and the teeth decay," close quote. American journalist and author Gene Fowler darkly confessed, quote, "Writing is easy. All you do is sit staring at a blank sheet of paper until drops of blood form on your forehead," close quote. And cultural commentator and author H.L. Mencken noted, quote, "Writing books is certainly a most unpleasant occupation. It is lonesome, unsanitary, and maddening. Many authors go crazy," close quote. So, Caroline, I know a lot of this is written about writing novels per se, but let's talk about the writing craft. Is writing actually that bad?
I'm just like laughing so much internally as you're reading these quotes because I feel like I often feel that on a weekly basis. I don't know. There is so much joy and satisfaction in having written something that you're proud of. Less so when you recognize that your draft is very lacking.
Mm,
But there is something really like brutal about it. And like rightly so, like, the written word is like an incredible gift, and like we should, kind of, I think, properly have a sense of like fear and fear and
Mm,
trembling before it. We shouldn't, yeah, take that too lightly, perhaps. But I think one thing that I'm really grateful about um, journalism and being so involved in the newspaper as first a writer and now an editor is that like I'm just forced time and time again, like there's no time for you to just like procrastinate
mm.
and kind of twiddle your thumbs and like let that, blank computer screen stare you back in the face. Like I, it, yeah, again, yeah, there's no time. There's simply no time.
Yeah.
You have a deadline and you're failing a lot of people if you don't meet it. And so I've gotten better, I think, at getting out of my head and just putting words down and then editing them. Like it will need help. But um, I think that's part of the pain is just when you get to a place where you are letting the perfect be the enemy of the good
Mm.
and not even beginning. And again, I fight that battle all the time. But I am grateful that kind of cold hard reality comes knocking. Like I am accountable to my fellow editors. And by golly, is this like piece gonna have to be done in the next 2 hours? So
It's like the Ben Frank. I think it was Ben Franklin who said it. He said nothing concentrates the mind like knowing that you're going to be hanged in a fortnight. That
yeah,
that
yeah,
here
yeah.
comes. So also, what matters the most? We're going to talk more about kind
Hmm.
of the nature of writing under deadline in just a minute. When did you first discover that you liked writing?
Oh my word. I think maybe around the time that I just like discovered how much I loved reading, I remember so clearly. I think between kindergarten and first grade, if I'm remembering correctly, like really discovering reading. Like it just kind of came alive, and I would, do the kid thing of staying up under the covers
Mm,
reading until, what seemed to me too late. It was probably like 10 p.m.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
um, that, and then, my mom telling me, like, no, you have to limit yourself to like, 5 or 7 books or whatever at the library because I would like have a stack like up to my little chin. But yeah, I think that love of story was like what made me love writing, and I would write all these little things for fun as a kid. And then I think in high school, like I both had some great creative writing experiences, but then perhaps even more formatively, like um, had great experiences with like writing a capstone for my senior year. So I came into college like knowing that like this is something that I think I have somewhat of a gift with and that I just really enjoy, and I'm like really curious about how I can learn to do this better.
Yeah. Tell me about your writing habits. What is it? And I know that there's you have different commitments with the Collegian. You have commitments with us, and when you do your freelance with us. I'm sure you do some writing on the side for yourself and for others, obviously for classes and so on.
Mhm.
What's your best rhythm as a writer? What does it look like? Are you early morning, a late at night? Are you do you have an outline? What do you just flesh it out and then just tweak? What's your approach?
Man, yeah, maybe don't take this as a blueprint. I'm a college student, so I do a lot of things late at night, but I mean, I'll also be able to carve out kind of pockets of time and, mid-morning, afternoon to do stuff as well. It's not solely at night.
Yeah.
But I, at this point, I'll kind of, at least for like an opinion piece, something like that, I'll kind of come in with like more or less of an idea of like kind of the thesis or central idea of the work, but a lot just happens on the page.
Mm,
My really wonderful journalism professor, John J. Miller, here, he runs the journalism program. he likes to say that, like the muse is in the act of writing. Like
Hmm.
you're kind of not struck by it beforehand. Like you have to sit down and do the work and it'll come to you. And that is, time and time again, he's been proven right.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, so I'm not like a, a rigorous outliner. I think sometimes I would do that as a younger writer, while I was kind of still learning. But at this point, I'll kind of come in with an idea of what I want to say, but a lot is discovered as you're kind of doing the writing because, to write clearly, you have to think clearly. And so that's kind of all just happening in tandem as you're putting words on the page.
It is interesting how you read. This is my own experience writing, but it's also interesting to read. I don't know if it was Flannery O'Connor who said effectively, I write to understand what I want to say, that it kind of evolves, or you hear time and time again, you hear novelists say that they're surprised by what their characters do, that they take on this life of their own, and they're just kind of, that's not the way that the novelist was originally planning on this, and yet this is what is unfolded, almost like the hand with the pen is moving independently of the mind of the writer who's writing it, and so I'm curious about how often when you're writing are you discovering along the way, I'm going to go in this direction, I'm not going to go in that direction, or I didn't think of that until my hand started writing, that's what it is. Do you have epiphanies in that fashion?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much with every piece, both with kind of journalism things, opinions, even kind of stories that I'm writing for other sections of the paper. Like, oh, I didn't know I would say that,
Yeah.
or oh, I didn't know I had that lead in me, but here it is. Uh, but also like I'll like to write short stories on the side or things of that nature.
Yeah.
I think especially I am like profoundly struck by like, wow, I had like just the inklings of a like vague idea coming in and it just like takes off um when I'm writing and I don't know how to explain it. I think it's kind of something that um unless you've experienced it as a writer, it's doesn't sound believable
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no way. Yeah.
So we got a glimpse of the young Caroline Kurt at the library with a stack of books up to your little chin. Um, we know that great writers are also voracious readers. So what are your reading habits? Do you read multiple books at once? Are you one book at a time kind of a person? Are you consumed in essays more than you are in reading books? Fiction, nonfiction? What are your reading habits?
Ooh, good question. It changes a bit, summer versus school year,
Yeah.
but school year it's a little bit hard to, as an English major, I'm reading just a lot, a lot, a lot. So it's a little bit harder to kind of bracket time for like fun reading. I will like almost always have a like spiritual book of some kind that I'm reading a little bit every day, but in terms of things that I'm kind of reading more um voraciously, quickly, whatever. I don't know. I'm a fairly fast reader, which sometimes serves me well and sometimes doesn't. Right now, I'm taking a class on Dostoevsky, so we're reading pretty much all of his major works, and another class on Renaissance lit. So we're reading the Henriade and uh, other Shakespeare, Paradise Lost, things of that nature. So I'm pretty busy with that. But it's been really nice at Hillsdale that the sorts of things that I'm, reading for class, multiple hundred pages a week
Hmm.
are also things that I'm like interested in. There isn't kind of this disconnect of like, ugh, like I have to do this class reading. I hate it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
That is almost never the case. I over the summer though, or on like winter breaks or whatever, when I'm kind of more reading at my leisure, I I don't know. I am definitely more of a fiction person, but uh, usually older stuff. It sort of has to. It takes a lot for me to like be able to get into like uh newer fiction. It has to
Mhm.
be like just really well done. I've been spoiled by just having read a lot of the great classic works.
Right.
I read the book at the recommendation of a couple English professors here. I read the recent Russian novel, Loris, over some recent break. And that's fantastic. It was written in like 2013, 2014, I want to say. Um, just incredible. But it's, yeah, usually stuff that's older.
Tell me a little about the role of mentors in your development as a writer. Who are some of the mentors? You've mentioned John J. Miller, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. Um, who are some of your mentors, and how have they formed you as a writer?
Yeah, the Collegian is really beautiful because it just makes it really, I think, easy and natural to find those kind of people. So John Miller, absolutely. Maria Servold, who also helps run the program, has been incredible. And she's great too because she is not only doing that, but she is, a mom of four and does a lot of freelance writing and editing and um, runs an early pregnancy, like miscarriage nonprofit. So she's someone that um, others, and myself included, can look at and be like, wow, like this maybe is like the, 20-year vision for us. And
Mm.
like, that's beautiful. So John and Maria have been incredibly formative. And then I think also, maybe less this year than as a sophomore, junior, but I was really able to look up to the older editors of the Collegian
Sure.
and be like, oh my word, like you guys are like too cool. I had the privilege of having um, really great editors who kind of saw what I was doing and were like, yeah, like, kind of like two thumbs up, like do more of this, please. And as someone who was still like developing confidence in my um, my writing abilities and then also just my role at the newspaper, like that was huge. Um, so yeah, it's this just really tight knit community, I think, of John and Maria who are overseeing the program, and then people who are a little bit more immersed in the day to day, editing, like those editors were.
Yeah, I would say also selfishly, what I like to say is that we at Evangelization Culture Online have been proud to kind of commission both Maria Servold and John Miller to write for us. So they are fantastic writers. I can see where they'd be terrific mentors and advocates. This is a little bit out of the blue, but I want to ask you this. Um, uh, uh, Three things you would advise your younger writers on the Collegian, three editor tips that you would give to them to become better writers.
Oh my word. Okay. Let's see. Um, I think going back to something I like said briefly earlier, like to like write clearly and like write well, you have to be able to think clearly. And I think I see like sort of a disparity in younger writers. Like you can really tell the difference between someone who is just really like knows what they think
Mm-hmm.
and is able to articulate that well, and then someone who is doing their best, but like just kind of is like, thrashing around in the dark, like sort of doesn't know what they think exactly. And so, the editor can't tell you, as an editor, I can't like, read your mind. And so to, yeah, to just be able to think well and clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And some writers totally figure it out. Like I myself had a couple like rough first pieces, so it's not an all or nothing sort of thing. But uh, that is huge if you can develop that ability. And I think going along with that, the second thing is just to um, read a lot and like read really good things and read the sort of things you would like to write. I try to do this. I read in terms of journalism publications. I read the Free Press and the Wall Street Journal daily. and then a bunch of great Substacks, but often with kind of, not always, but often with an eye toward like, I'm really especially following writers and topics and themes that I myself would like love to be able to write about well. And so I think that's the other thing when I can kind of tell, I think, when uh, younger writers have really read a lot of the kind of writing they're trying to do themselves.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that you kind of pick up on intuitively in terms of tone and style and organization and whatnot that you're, as an editor, you're like, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to start from square one. And then third, I think also um, just to man, I don't know how I like phrase this exactly, but to like live well, and I'll like that's super vague. I'll kind of flesh that out. But like as a writer, like you can only be so interesting if like your only world is kind of like the little self-contained world of, journalism, books, writing, whatnot. Some of the most interesting writers I have run on my page or just, read in the wider world are people who just have like fascinating lives outside of writing
Yeah.
and uh, often are, bringing bits and pieces of that into their craft. And so, you know, as a college student, you're like a little bit limited in some ways, like we all do sort of live like vaguely the same life for these 4 years, and that's intentional. You don't have to like drop out of school and like, hitchhike across the US necessarily, unless that's really your calling. But I think to like have an eye toward like, okay, let me also develop as a person
Mm-hmm.
outside of
Mm-hmm.
writing so that I can bring more to my craft. And that's like both external growth, like I've kind of been talking about, but also a lot of interior growth.
I like that. It makes me think a little bit about on a read from a reading standpoint. I think about the ninth grader reading Hamlet and the 35-year-old reading Hamlet. It's just
Oh yeah.
it's a different story, and it's a different story
Oh yeah.
because yes, you've matured, but you've also had life experiences, and
Hmm.
you're not just looking at it through the eyes of Hamlet. You're looking at it through the eyes of Polonius, or you're looking at it through the eyes of Gertrude, or
Hmm.
Claudius, or what have you. So you have enough life experience because between the time you're in ninth grade and the time you're 35 years old, you may have experienced illness, you may have a child or two, you may be married, you may have had a failure at a job, or you graduated from college. And likewise, like you said, when you write with experience, those times when you wince because you've experienced something, of which you write. And
Hmm.
there's a visceral aspect to what you're writing, just like there's a visceral response to what you're reading, simply because
Yeah.
you may have been there. So I love these three things: think clearly, read widely, live well. Those are great pieces of advice, and I appreciate that. And Caroline, to finish up this segment,
Yeah.
I do want you to say, so again, you're attending Hillsdale, you're majoring in English, and you're emphasizing journalism. You're serving as the opinions editor at the Collegian, which again, many people don't know this, but it's a nationally recognized college newspaper. It's really, really highly regarded as a college newspaper. What are the joys and trials? You've alluded to it, staring at that computer screen, it stares back at you. What are the joys and trials of writing or editing under deadline for a newspaper? Because that's very clearly a different form of writing than when you sit off to the side and you write a creative story for some other submission somewhere else and there's not a deadline associated with it. What do you like, and what do you not like so much about your gig with the Collegian?
Oh, good question. I think, yeah, with deadlines and just like, the Collegian is a weekly newspaper. The editors get together every Wednesday night and put the Wednesday afternoon and night and put the whole paper together. And, send it to the printers. So there's that real hard deadline. And I think, like I said before, like it kind of challenges you to hone your craft in a way that you can sit down, write something in a limited amount of time that is true and well put together, and like you're really aiming to have, turn in a draft that doesn't need a whole lot of, like, it might need some tinkering, but like shouldn't require a rewrite because there's just often not time for that.
Right.
So I think that's really good, and that can be applied to not only other types of writing, but academic, creative, whatnot, but also to many areas of life. So that's a good skill. I think in opinion, sometimes like there's a challenge of uh, as college students, like I kind of said earlier, like we do have limited experience, both kind of externally and then um, internally, just because we're young. And so sometimes, like, there's a challenge in assigning sensitive or just mature or nuanced topics to a writer who is still just trying to kind of cut their teeth,
Hmm.
figure out what all this is about. And you want to give people opportunities to do that, obviously, because we all, all of us, writers were given a first chance,
Yep.
and it might not have been pretty. um, but I think I am sometimes just a little like slightly frustrated by that necessary limitation of like I have high standards, and um but I also kind of have to be pragmatic enough to realize like this might, you know, this might not be the most um kind of mature or complex take that I could possibly imagine for this
Hmm.
topic. Like
Hmm.
it'll be good. It'll be
Yeah.
really good. This is also a great uh thing to kind of counteract my perfectionism, is like there are just like limits and there's
Yeah.
only so much time. So I'm actually really grateful for that aspect of the job. Um, so yeah, that and even myself in my own writing, I think I'll sometimes like wish I had, yeah, just more time, especially to develop a topic
Hmm.
fully. I have a column in the paper called After Eden that runs twice a month, which has been so fun. And I'm also really, really grateful that when I set it up last year, I decided it would only be twice a month rather than every week.
Yeah.
Just with student life and everything, I think it would be a far poorer column if I was rushing to do something every week. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Last question here. Before we move on to our final segment here, Caroline, why do you write? What does what you write have to do with what you believe? So why do you write,
Mm,
and what does what you write have to do with what you believe?
man. I think a lot of it comes down to just feeling this, calling. We get the parable of the talents in the gospel, and like, man, I don't want to be the, guy who buries his one talent. And I've been just really blessed to be kind of immersed in a community here, especially, but even in high school, that kind of believes the same thing of like, if you're like good at something, like run with that, develop it,
Hmm.
use it for the greater good of the world and like God's glory. And yeah, so that sense of calling, of vocation, which is kind of just another way of saying that, um, of just a love too. Like selfishly, I love it so much, and um, also because um, even in my uh, limited time here, like I've received a lot of positive feedback from faculty, students here, about just my page. Like people really like to read the Collegian at Hillsdale. I don't know how it is at other colleges with other college papers, but we print both. In We print both like hard copies of like a newspaper and online. And so you can walk around on Thursdays when it comes out and see people sitting everywhere with, the hard copies. And so there's a real sense too of like, this is really contributing to the college community in a really important way, both in our news coverage and then, feature stuff, opinions. And so like writing is a service to the community, to just the truth, the way people think about things. And it has been a joy to kind of like lend my gifts to that endeavor, and also to see like people be grateful for that.
Hi, I'm Todd Warner, Managing Editor of Evangelization Culture, the journal of the Word on Fire Institute. Word on Fire is a global evangelical community that exists to provide our members with the resources they need to proclaim Christ to a secular culture. Our award-winning quarterly journal, Evangelization Culture, is offered exclusively to Word on Fire Institute members. It's a tangible representation of our mission and goal to lead with beauty in order to bring others to the knowledge of truth. Inside each issue, you'll find writing from premier scholars and inspiring pieces on literature, culture, and daily life from fellow missionaries on the journey to know and serve Christ. Get a copy of the current issue of the Evangelization Culture Journal for free by visiting wordonfire.org/journal. Thank you, and join us in bringing Christ to a hungry culture. Segment 3. The College Beat and the Crisis of Faith in College Students. I recently discussed this very statistic with Father Nate Wills of Notre Dame, but I'd like to explore it with you as well. Several years ago, Curtis Martin, the founder of the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, or also known as FOCUS, mourned that over 85% of Catholic students are leaving the faith by the end of their college years, and that is at Catholic universities. So, Caroline, from a college student's perspective, what happened?
Man, I think it is probably some combination of the sorts of the formation or lack of formation that people are getting through, their formative years in middle school and high school. Actually, like really sadly, even people at Catholic schools aren't necessarily getting the kind of faith formation that is really, sinking in deep and shaping their lives. And in some ways, I think it's a little bit difficult for me to come up with a good answer to this question, just because I've had a really positive experience, both middle school and high school, and then in college with my Catholic community. So, but I think it is still true that it is some combination of that formation or lack thereof. And then coming to college, the kinds of friends you're making, the daily choices and habits you're making, like just, I think underestimating the effect that those are going to have on you. We're just kind of, in one way, we're just like poor little animals who are just very much shaped by the small things that we do every day. And I know in my own life, it's totally possible to build up really strong habits of prayer and whatnot, but it's also very easy to let those slide when things get busy or hard, or you encounter a new kind of suffering. And so I think it is probably true that it's sort of this perfect storm, and also perhaps a little different in everybody's lives. I think if I were to ask people that I know who have like reverted or come back to the faith after losing it for a while, they would probably say something along those lines.
Do you think that what you've described as this Catholic community that you found at Hillsdale, and knowing that there's at a lot of non-Catholic schools, there's Newman centers, but obviously at a lot of Catholic schools, there's opportunities for daily mass or weekly mass or kind of groups of like-minded faithful Catholics or what have you. Do you think there's something? Do you think that what you found at Hillsdale, and this is not an advertisement for Hillsdale, the great school, but do you feel like that's available from your understanding of friends that have gone to other colleges? Is that kind of enclave of like-minded Catholics? Is it present at all these other schools, and it's just up to the student as to whether they tap into it, or do you feel like, from what you understand, it's sort of anemic and doesn't really serve the needs of students at these other schools, and what you found is something pretty special at Hillsdale? Any thoughts on that?
Man, I think it's hard to generalize.
Yeah.
I have friends at a lot of different Catholic schools and then also public schools as well. I think sometimes maybe what sets someplace like Hillsdale apart from schools that are Catholic is that um, here you can't take, the Catholicism for granted. As strong as our Catholic community is, it really is on you a little bit to uh, seek out, the faith, the sacraments, and make that part of your daily life. There's going to be so many people to support you in that, but um, I hesitate to like say this is always the case. I absolutely don't think it is. But I think sometimes it may happen at Catholic schools where um, you come in, slightly lukewarm about your faith, like care about it, but um, not enough. And because you're, a good Catholic kid from a good Catholic family going to a good Catholic school,
Hmm.
you kind of place the burden of um, like the Catholicity or whatever on the school and feel just maybe freer to let it slide.
Hmm.
Again, like I have so many friends for whom like that has not been the case at all. So I'm not saying that is universal, but um, yeah, and at the same time, like Catholic schools are really privileged in being able to, I think, offer the sacraments and like daily mass, confession, and then specifically Catholic faith formation a little bit more
Hmm.
widely.
Hmm.
We have absolutely incredible saintly priests here at Hillsdale, but there's just like two of them and one that visits once a week. So um, there's a lot more limitation there, especially given how like big the Catholic community is.
Yeah.
They're doing a fantastic job, but it's really hard. So does that answer your question,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
do you want me to
Yeah. Yeah.
delve into another aspect of that?
No, 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 that's perfect. That's perfect. So in the last few years, as we all know, we've seen an extraordinary tumult on college campuses, ranging from violent protests to disruptive occupations, from ideological anger to calculating assassination. So amidst this kind of Sturm und Drang, the storm and steel, students are turning to political philosophies and charismatic leaders for answers. They're not always turning to faith.
Hmm.
What in your opinion do you feel like? I know this is generalizing, but do you have a sense about what these students are looking for and what they're finding?
I mean, we're all looking for, something to worship, something to kind of, you know, form the foundation of our lives. And especially as like the, strength of the family and the local community in this country have kind of on average really like suffered. I think we need that more than ever.
Hmm.
And um, many haven't been formed in a way in which they can easily recognize, like, no, that I'm looking for God.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's as a young person, it is like common and also really fair for you to be searching for something to kind of give you all the answers and for you to build your life on. And like we as young people like really long to give ourselves away. I think that's a special gift of the maybe, under 30 set, is that like we um haven't necessarily like made those, you know, kind of commitments yet. And so we're still like looking like where, to whom can I give myself away? And you see this in the sort of like religious devotion some people have to political causes, whether on the right or the left, or um, social causes, and it just becomes disordered when that is taking the place that God should take, properly, um, taking your lives. And obviously, we both know that, all whether it's a political cause or social cause or even another faith that is just incomplete. None of those are perfect and none of those are going to be ultimately fulfilling in the way that you really need and long for.
Yeah.
And so they leave you kind of back at square one, still searching, still kind of a mess.
It's sort of like the surrogates of God, right? Wealth, power, honor,
Hmm.
pleasure,
Yeah.
and like you said, looking for an authoritative figure that kind of will provide, kind of ease the restless heart or fill the God-shaped hole or what have you. So no, that's well said. I also want to ask you, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it became acutely apparent that college students are craving free and open dialogue about matters of infinite importance. So, from your perspective on the college campus, what role does freedom of speech, freedom of conscience have in the discernment, the apprehension, and the pursuit of truth?
I mean, uh, maybe it's just stating the blatantly obvious, but I
Yeah.
think you need to be able to hear the truth, to recognize it and follow it and give yourself away. So yeah, I mean, again, perhaps that's just like too obvious to be, to even say, but um, I think every Christian can um, kind of trace their faith lives to a moment or, in the lives of many, like many, many, many moments of hearing something about God, the faith, whatnot, and just immediately having a sense of like, yeah, wait, yes, that's true. I like maybe would have um, never or just very slowly come to that conclusion on my own, but having heard it, like I can apprehend kind of immediately that um, yes, that is true. Like my mind and my heart are all affirming that. Um, and so, both for the sake of, you know, coming to, better political and social solutions, but even more so in guiding people toward the true faith, like you absolutely need to be able to have honest conversations without undue inhibition.
And I think to add to that, which was well said, when every age is an ideological age that wants to crowd God off of the platform, and ideologies tend to have their talking points and their orthodoxies that accept you to say this or accept or prevent you from saying that. There is obviously these modern chilling effects on people just asking questions, engaging in honest conversation, and it leads to, if not censorship from the society as a whole, if you will, to a self censorship out of fear of
Hmm.
cancellation, out of fear of reprimand, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the things in the Catholic world, the Catholic faith that we've discovered is there is a right, there is a wrong, but God grants us the free will to go through this process to arrive at the right and to leave the wrong. But it's this process of conversation and discernment and formation and growth that in the stunting environments that shut down free conversation, free discussion, free debate, it makes people almost arrive at an arrested development. And it's one of the things that, a piece that I wrote not too long ago, if you have whoever it is, but whatever entities come out there and shout down people from being able to talk, shoot at people, to kill them or deprive publication of certain things and so on and so forth, you shut down that free exchange, that conversation that allows for the discernment that comes with free will. Yes, there is a right. Yes, there is a wrong, but that free play of conversation and idea exchange and so on to arrive at the right and to leave the wrong gets obliterated when profound censorship and then self-censorship follows suit. Is that fair to say? Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I mean, even perhaps even more so than, people who are older adults, like, teenagers, 20 somethings, like, need to do a lot of wrestling and need, in fact, to like come to a lot of wrong conclusions
Yeah.
before we can come to the right ones. And, I know this from my own life. I know this from, many friends. Like, we've all like thought really silly things for a while, whether it was about the faith, or just, some aspect of politics or social life or, the dynamics between men and women, etc. You can be wrong on so many different things. But like, you know, thank you, Lord, that like we were, for the most part, all living in environments where uh, we didn't need to worry so much about self-censorship, which I think is far, far, far more common than, you know, actual cancellation. I think,
Yeah.
it's probably kind of a, 300 to 1 ratio
Yeah.
of that happening.
Yeah. Caroline, with a massive attrition of Catholic faith among college students, Evangelization and Culture Online has launched a new initiative, the College Beat, which is found at wordonfire.org, where we feature outstanding college writers who contribute to, staff, or run their college newspapers, and who write about issues important to the college student through the lens of a Catholic sensibility. So, Caroline, not only have you been a backbone writer for the College Beat, but you also have looked into just who are the best writers on the college campuses today. What did you find when you looked? And we're talking about you looking at writers from Notre Dame to Benedictine, from Princeton to Clemson, Yale to the University of Dallas, University of Wisconsin-Madison to Hillsdale, among many others. What have you found about the quality of work and the nature of topics being written by fellow Catholic college students?
Oh my word. This was such a fun part of working with Word on Fire over the summer is getting to read all these, college newspapers. I read a lot of bad stuff. But when I came across something that was like wonderful and what we were looking for, it was just so great. I think a common theme among the writing of the people we have brought into the College Beat is that, um, again, they know what they think. Like there's a clarity there. A lot of the bad pieces that I would read, I mean, sometimes the writer really knew what they thought, and they were sometimes wrong, very much so. But even more than that, there was just a lot of writing that, again, was sort of just thrashing around in the dark, very like muddy and unclear. And, when you're really, part of this great Catholic tradition, the beauty of that is that, while two things are true at the same time. Like the church really encourages you to learn and inquire and work through doubt and wrestle with it. But I think also there is so much that you already just find the answers to. Like you don't have to kind of start from uh, square one and building your worldview. And instead you have centuries of wisdom. And so even as a rather foolish 20 something, you can kind of write with a really beautiful clarity. So the clarity, and then in terms of topics, man, like, you know, as you might expect, you can write with a really wonderful Catholic sensibility about nearly anything, and
Hmm.
that's what we found. Uh, some writers that we brought into the college beat were writing regularly about matters of faith, but others, you know, had nothing or maybe just like one piece about kind of more directly touching their Catholic faith, and everything else they wrote though was imbued with um, that clarity and that real Catholic sensibility. And the Hillsdale cliche, which shouldn't be a cliche because it is so necessary, is writing with uh, a sense of the transcendental, so the true, the good, the beautiful. That really comes through very strongly, especially in contrast to um, writers who very obviously don't have that.
Yeah, that's so good. So the College Beat will publish an essay from a college writer every 2 weeks that will explore various issues. So to some of what you were just mentioning, issues like what physics can teach us about God, how sacred music can edify the studying student, the spirituality of dumb phones, a young Catholic's temptation to Marxism, the odyssey of the Catholic athletes, and many, many more. So these essays are crafted by the next generation of great Catholic writers who will speak to the concerns of our Word on Fire readers, their children or their grandchildren in college. But they also speak to every lifelong learner searching for the true, the good, and the beautiful in a sea of uncertainty, insecurity, and nihilism. So, Caroline, does Catholicism, in your eyes, have anything relevant to say to today's college student? And why does an endeavor like the College Beat, why is it important in cultivating young Catholic writers and forming young Catholic minds?
Man, I mean, yeah, yes. I think you would be duly concerned if I said no. Um, but sort of like we had discussed earlier, you know, all of the most pressing questions we're asking ourselves as college students, and these are different, a little bit different for
Mm,
everybody's life, but often come down to kind of matters of like what do I do with my life, like to whom do I give myself away, etc. How do I think about the world, how do I reckon with my relationships? The Catholic Church has the answers, and not in the sense of kind of pat answers that are formulaic and unhelpful, like sometimes various like political ideologies will attempt to give those, and um, they aren't necessarily helpful. But the Catholic Church has, uh, instead of pat answers, like the wisdom,
mm.
and the wisdom founded in like, I mean, love. Obviously, it's not just an intellectual thing. And I have had the great privilege of seeing how this is played out in the lives of friends who have either converted during their time at Hillsdale, often from various Christian backgrounds, or who are still in the process of wrestling, like with, you know, learning more about the Catholic faith and considering converting. And so it's been really beautiful to see how this like takes place in the lives of people that I know and love.
One last question, Caroline. You've been very generous with your time. What do you hope to achieve personally and in the public square as a writer, and in particular by writing for the College Beat with Evangelization and Culture Online?
I think maybe first and foremost to bring a lot of hope to people. I think I mean, it's just the way things always go. Like the older generations are uh, concerned, to say the least, about the younger generations, and I think there's merit to that, obviously. And you can look up pretty worrying statistics about Gen Z, but I also, I'm one of them, and I know many, 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 many young people at Hillsdale and all across the country who are just growing into thoughtful and grounded and fantastic and just fascinating people who are going to do so much good. And very often that's because they are like their lives are firmly rooted in the Catholic faith. And so I think that is a huge cause for hope. Um, and so to be able to communicate that, whether directly or indirectly through the college beat, both to older readers of Word on Fire, absolutely, and then also to kind of my fellow Gen Zers, that hey, like not all is lost, like it never is. Like you know, uh, Christ is constantly renewing our lives, and here are all the ways in which He does it. And here are all the ways in which the Catholic faith is just like radically alive in like absolutely every, area of your life, every area of study, every area of concern. So yeah.
Caroline Kurt, Catholic, opinions editor for Hillsdale College's The Collegian, and talented writer for Evangelization Culture Online's The College Beat. Thanks so much for this conversation. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
So I've been thinking, I am so encouraged. Every generation laments the disillusioning state of the generation following it. Kids these days is the frequent refrain, followed by a litany of complaints that the young are unthinking, faithless, lazy, selfish, and the list goes on and on. But Caroline Kurt, a Catholic, a writer, and a senior at Hillsdale College, gives me great hope for the generation to come. Now, to be sure, we've seen a lot of tumult in the last number of years. Our society has become more angry, polarized, and unforgiving. People have become increasingly depressed, distracted, and dislocated from one another. Mercy seems displaced by vengeance. Generosity seems overrun by selfishness. We all seem a little more like Cain and Abel than Mary and Martha. But Caroline Kurt gives me hope. In the midst of disorder, this young woman holds fast to a Catholic order. In the face of disbelief, she champions faith. In the presence of intellectual muddle, she pursues a spirited clarity, and she's only a college student. Evangelization and Culture Online's The College Beat has invited a talented cadre of college writers to offer reflections on matters of faith as they play out in the public square. After all, what good is faith that is not equipped for life in the trenches? These students are wise beyond their years, and they model, even in their youth, an inspiring commitment to flower up the desert. And they do it so well. In his book, Finding the World's Fullness, poet Robert Cording notes, quote, French philosopher Simone Weil once said that the best proof of the good resides in the way the forces of entropy and destruction are kept at bay, if only barely, close quote. Let us pray for our young Catholic college student writers like Caroline Kurt and the others who are writing for the College Beat. May they, in their ongoing efforts, keep God at the forefront and the forces of entropy and destruction at bay. And one last thing. Come to Evangelization Culture Online and read the terrific writing from the College Beat. There you'll encounter a wide array of insights from the next generation of Catholic thinkers and writers. But while you're at it, check out Flannery O'Connor's 4 letters to Alfred Korn, a freshman in college at the time of their correspondence. See what the brilliant yet acerbic O'Connor had to say to an uncertain college student hungry for wisdom. This exchange can be enjoyed in Flannery's collected letters, A Habit of Being. Thank you once again for joining me on the Evangelization and Culture Podcast. I'm Todd Warner, and until we meet again, keep bringing Christ to a hungry culture.